3 people missing in Australia amid the nation's worst heat wave in years. Evacuations are underway as temperatures soar past 40 degrees Celsius. And for more, we have Mark Howden joining us live from Canberra. He's the director of the Institute for Climate, Energy and Disaster Solutions at the Australian National University. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. You know, large parts of Australia are currently really experiencing an intense heat wave and temperatures soaring way past 40 degrees Celsius. How unusual are these conditions, and what role is climate change really playing in driving this extreme heat?
These are the worst heat waves that we've seen for about 6 or 7 years, and that's associated previously with what we call the Black Summer, which was an extraordinarily hot, dry and fire-prone period in our history. And so these heat waves are highly unusual. They come on the back of significant increases in global temperature due to climate change. And what we're seeing with these fire risk increases in Australia is very similar to what we're seeing in other places.
Well, and these temperatures are really raising serious concerns about bushfires, health impacts, and even infrastructure stress. We are looking at large scale of infrastructure that's being disrupted. What are the biggest risks really associated with heat waves like this one?
Heat waves are the single biggest climate killer in Australia. They kill more people than floods and cyclones or hurricanes and similar events. So it is a significant human health issue. It's also a significant issue for infrastructure. Through things like breakdown of energy systems, because when they get too hot, they get overloaded. And it also impacts on our sort of health systems and on natural systems as well. So high levels of heat impact on native animals and plants, as well as directly through heat. They also influence that through fire, of course.
Well, you mentioned about Black Summer just earlier in your answer. After the Black Summer bushfires, what lessons were really learned about the relationship between extreme heat and fire risk? And are we, better prepared this time?
Oh, very much so. So every time we have a major event, we learn a lot, and so our next time is better prepared. The challenge, of course, there is that climate change means that even though we may be better prepared, there's still surprises that happen and more severe conditions. And so that means that preparedness still is not enough. So preparedness includes things like designing of houses better, so we can design much more fire-proof houses than we have before. It's things like better projections of fire danger and fire behaviour and heatwave danger and heatwave behaviour. And so training both the community and the emergency responders to deal with that more effectively, providing better equipment for the emergency responders, and providing communication channels for people to get more information on when they should evacuate and when they should stay, and also enhancing coordination across our fire systems and our heat and hospital systems. So there's many, many things which have improved, but every time we encounter something like what we've got at the moment, which is catastrophic levels of bushfire risk, essentially that means unmanageable bushfires. And so even with all the preparedness in the world, we're still faced with things that we can't deal with, that are going to do their own thing.
Absolutely. And you spoke about various areas in Australia itself. Urban areas really often experience higher temperatures also, due to the heat island effect. How much of this heat is really driven by perhaps the city design, and what changes could make Australian cities more heat resilient?
It's a good point. And so what we see across our cities here in Australia and across the world is that the difference between leafy and green suburbs and those where essentially just you've got roofs and roads and similar things is very, very different. So you can have several degrees of temperature reduction if you have well-designed buildings, leafy green suburbs with lots of evaporation, lots of shade. So that's one of the key things there. And of course, we can design much better buildings these days that don't suffer from neither the high levels of temperature that we're seeing at the moment, nor the cold conditions in winter that we experience. So we can design buildings that are much better insulated and designed that also reduce the danger from smoke at the same time. And of course, we can design our suburbs better so that they're less prone to heat wave conditions through orientation of buildings, through parks and waterways. And we can design better materials. So materials that don't absorb as much heat, that reflect some of the heat back out into the space, and that don't retain the heat overnight as much as they can in the past. So there's lots of things we can do our cities to make them much more livable.
You mentioned about global impact and global changes as well. We're seeing record heat, not just in Australia, and as you've rightly pointed, across the globe as well. And how does this heat wave really fit into the wider international trend of really rising temperatures?
It's exactly aligned with what we're seeing elsewhere in the globe, and also what we've been predicting as a science community for 20 or more years. So this should come as no surprise that we're seeing increased frequency, severity and length of heat waves and of problems to do with fires. And so if you look across the pattern of fires across the globe, we see really significant increase in fire danger. Just think back to Los Angeles some months ago with the huge losses of, roughly 100 billion Australian dollars in insurance losses there. And so, and of course, massive loss of life as well. And so what we're seeing is a real ramping up in risk associated with heat waves and associated with fires. And that's happening right across the globe, and it's happening in ways which are very consistent with our science understanding.
You spoke about the damages. You also spoke about, how much it will cost really to rectify all of this. But looking ahead, what measures can governments and local communities really take to better manage and reduce the impacts of longer, hotter heat waves?
First thing we can do is reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So greenhouse gas emissions are driving the increased temperature profiles that we're seeing across the globe and the fire risk that we're seeing. And so reducing those down to net zero is a start. It's not the finish of the job because the temperatures we've already experienced, the temperature increases, mean that we're going to have increased heat wave and fire risk for centuries to come. So we not only have to go to net zero, we actually have to go below zero if we're to wind back the climate change clock, as it were. And because it's unlikely we're going to be doing that in a hurry, it means we have to adapt to the changes and the risk increases that we're seeing. So we have to be much more on the front foot about adaptation. And I've already mentioned several of those things. So we can have adaptation through better design of our systems, better operation of our systems, better prediction in our systems, better communication of what people can do, and better policies that encourage people to take early action and good preparedness when we think a fire season or a heat wave is coming our way.
Absolutely. And all of this really a reminder that extreme heat isn't just about uncomfortable weather. It has real impacts on lives, livelihoods, and the systems we rely on. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Mark Howden, Director, Institute for Climate, Energy and Disaster Solutions at the Australian National University.